So Cubism was adopted even more enthusiastically by a group of Italian people led by, well, this is actually a group of not just regular artists, but poets, musicians, and painters. And the group was led by Marinetti, and he was the writer of the Futurist Manifesto, which I think I linked to you in the module section. This movement was to free Italy from the classic ideals and to create its own sense of modern style that could fit in well with the industrial world. So a lot like in the Dada fashion, people would get together for these crazy nights where they did almost like a chaotic sense of music and poetry that kind of went along with the new artwork. So here we see the very radical newspaper La Serba, Giovanni Papini and Ardengo Soffici, and this was meant to sort of provoke people. They had some very inappropriate essays contained within the publication. And around this time, people were trying to push the envelope and they were trying to kind of see how far they could take things, how radical they could really get. They were kind of going for shock value. And as you can see, the very in your face, the very large masthead with the name of the publication at the top. Very bold, very attention grabbing, kind of no nonsense quality about it. So the idea here was to sort of have the layout of the text and the font and all of that sort of mimic the almost warlike tones of the publication, which eventually quit when the two creators wound up joining the army. This image is by Umberto Boccioni, called Dynamism of a Football Player. And it's a very dynamic, energetic painting. This is a lot closer to what we typically think of when we're imagining Cubism. We tend to think of images a lot like this, and you can kind of see it looks like almost pieces of paper rolled up and glued together in almost a collage-like fashion, which was sort of the goal of Cubism, to kind of have a mixture of the two-dimensional with the three-dimensional. And though it sticks to the style, there's nothing very set in stone about this. It almost has a looseness or a sense of movement, of kinetic energy. Another tenet of the Cubism and Futurism movement was to sort of have this man as machine feeling, which you will also kind of get shining through in this. Futurism was sort of a diagonal layout of text, a diagonal orientation. We saw this in the Fortunato de Pero poster, but we're also seeing it here in the Wyndham Lewis image. This was from an art journal. This journal was titled, as you can see, Blast, and though it is pretty straightforward, it definitely has the ideals of the futurist movement, almost like an anarchic quality to it, kind of just very bold and very provocative way of displaying the text. One of the people who inspired Vorticism, which was a pretty short-lived movement that was inspired by the art and poetry taking place in the 19th century. It was sort of getting rid of these British conservative ideals and just kind of taking futurism at a more extreme level. And the Vorticism featured sort of a geometric, abstract style, got away from the images of nudes and just kind of, instead of having landscapes or anything that was almost realistic, kind of broke things down into different parts. Visiting Edward McKnight Coffer, who for sure was already part of the Cubist movement, but he also leaned towards the Futurism and Vorticist styles, as you can see in this poster. You see the interplay between man and machine when you can see the arm coming out here as if to power the underground system. And then within the logo you can see the London Underground symbol. But it also looks like a train wheel, and the book mentions that it also is reminiscent of a turbine, so kind of giving that factory type of feel to the image. And I thought was super cool was the text sort of mimics the round shapes in the image, and as well as the color. I really like the blue and orange mixture. I think it looks pretty nice, kind of having the contrasting colors and sort of this geometric pattern we have going on, sort of an abstraction. So this poster is part of the Art Deco movement by A.M. Cassandra. It is called Restaurez-vous au wagon bar, Restore Yourself in the Wagon Bar, from 1932. It's a color lithograph. And this image was actually inspired by the Purist movement, sort of tried to create their own new style based on the Cubist principles, and this was something that was contextual to the war at the time. They hoped to kind of create a new spirit that the war would kind of inspire them to kind of do better afterwards. And what is kind of remarkable about this painting is that you do see sort of a pure quality to the objects within it. Whether we're talking about the wine glass, the wine bottle, and it's all incorporated down here with, like, this looks like the undercarriage of a train, so we've got this industrial aspect to it as well. And also, kind of one of the ideas of this was to tell a story through the image itself without a need for a whole lot of subtext. One of his big beliefs was that graphic design should be separate from art because of the meaning that it's trying to convey, which is evident especially in this poster for Duvernay. So you can see the same style is used with the wine glass that is present in the previous poster. And we see definitely a play on words here. It's almost genius, is that each word stands on its own, but is also part of the larger title of the liquor company. And as he's drinking this glass of liquor, he's getting fuller, both figuratively, as you know, the coloring is successively filling up the outline more each time, but he's also getting full from the product itself. As though, even though the glass of wine is a bit abstracted, it still looks almost realistic in a sense, and almost not photographic realistic, but it really looks like what it represents. But though the drawing of the man is actually mimicking that style, when it's used on a human, it looks completely like different. It's very stylized, if you will. It's not, there's nothing realistic about it at all when the man is drawn in the same abstraction. So I just thought that was kind of neat. Deco, which started in England, was an extremely unified look that came from the Purism and the Cubism ideals, but just kind of driven more into the design aesthetic of the time. It was a very geometric movement, and just sort of a geometric, ornate, geometric abstraction. And the Art Deco style sort of had a very very cohesive, almost machine-made, very precise look to it, but at the same time it was also very simple and not overly embellished. Images of the Normandie, and it is by also Cassandra, which was a super fast ship that was 1,000 feet long. And this ship really stood to embellish the glamour and wealth associated with the Art Deco style. Design tactic employed in this ship, as well as Art Deco in general, is called streamlining, where not only is the function of it beneficial, so in terms of streamlining the process, you hear that expression, this did the curves did make the boat move a bit faster, but it also was used even when function was not a concern in other objects where these lines that curved and sort of looked very sleek and very modern, very luxurious were kind of used. And this poster itself uses sweeping lines in depicting the boat. You also see that the bottom of the boat lines up perfectly with the text and the title of the ship right here. This is almost reminiscent of the Art Nouveau images when they would have a pedestal made out of text for the image, only this time we're not seeing a beautiful man or a woman, we're seeing an object. And there's a very obvious symmetry to the image. I'm almost wondering if that was part of the goal of simplicity to Art Deco. Lecture with one of the typefaces that was designed by Cassandra, called Bifur typeface. Was introduced by Devernay and Pignol, which was a French foundry. This is one of many fonts that he invented. And what I think is influential about these is that these letters are reduced to just enough information so that you can distinguish what makes the letters the letters. So with B, it almost looks like a backwards 3, but you know that it's a B because no other letter resembles the same thing with the R. We're missing the line right here. However, we know that it's an R. And the F, you could read this as two horizontal parallel lines, but we know that it's an F. Especially from a distance, you could really distinguish what these were meant to signify. And this is an extremely stylized font, and also contains the same geometric abstraction that we're used to with the Art Deco. And this would definitely be something to complement the style of his work. Type is definitely influenced by the decorative Art Deco flourishes that we see in the image.